This morning is Jeff Buchheit, who is Executive Director of the Baltimore National Heritage Area, and someone who kindly volunteered to be here this morning, agreed to be here this morning, to answer questions about the Mencken House, which we've always harbored and some of us have wondered about. To the point of distraction, and others would love to hear more about. This is the future of the Mencken House on Union Square. Jeff, please welcome Jeff Buchheit.
Brigitte, is this on? Yeah.
Yes.
Brigitte and Nick, can you help me pass out some stuff? Do you mind?
I shall too.
Okay. I'll give you that. I've got one more thing, Nick. Okay. Actually, it might be right here. And I may not have brought enough for everybody, so if people came together, if you could share, it might help. All right. Thanks.
Frida, could you pass these back? And also.
All right. I'm Jeff Buchheit. I have the honor and privilege of being the Executive Director of the Baltimore National Heritage Area since December of 2007. I also have the curse of always having to follow wonderful presentations and acts. Was that not great? Can we have one more round of applause? He did such a great job. So Bob asked me to come here today to speak, to talk to you about the future of the H.L. Mencken House. So actually, we're going to do this in three parts. I'm going to spend some time telling you what the Baltimore National Heritage Area is, what we do. Then I'm going to share with you kind of the timeline we're looking at for the H.L. Mencken House, and then some Q&A. And I'm going to spend a decent amount of time talking about what the Baltimore National Heritage Area is and what we do, because if we're going to date and live together, et cetera, in the H.L. Mencken House, we all need to know who we are and what we do. So that's why I want to spend time on talking about the National Heritage Area. All right, let's make sure this works. And also, by the way, if you survive my presentation, I brought a gift for everybody. So we'll see. That's the one thing I've got going for me. I bring gifts. All right, history organizations in Baltimore. Baltimore National Heritage Area has been around a long time, but so is a lot of other history organizations in Baltimore. This is a city that really loves its history. So there's a lot of us out there that are really working to promote that history and celebrate it. We have the Baltimore National Heritage Area, which is us. We have Baltimore Heritage, Inc., that's been around, I think, almost 60 years now. And a lot of times those two groups, the Baltimore National Heritage Area and Baltimore Heritage, get confused. The Baltimore City Historical Society, the Commission for Historical and Architectural Preservation, the Greater Baltimore History Alliance, and the Greater Baltimore Cultural Alliance. Also, in terms of loving our history, we recognize and we protect our history, thanks to people that work very hard on that. We have 33 local historic districts, 200 plus city landmarks, 24 national historic landmarks. We're here today because of one of those. 292 properties and districts on the National Register, and then the designation of the Baltimore National Heritage Area. And one of the things that's coming around is actually the map and guide for the Baltimore National Heritage Area, and I'll just throw out right now, when you open that up and study the inside the map, you'll see that the Baltimore National Heritage Area is not the entire city limits. It's 22 square miles of what we considered at the time, about 15, 20 years ago, to be the most historic sections of the city. We're actually now working on a boundary expansion, which we'll be going through in the next few years, where we'll expand the boundary of the Baltimore National Heritage Area, because we feel, you'll see it when you look at the map, there's a lot of areas of the city that should have been included. So, what in the world is a heritage area? Most people know what a park is, people know what scenic byways are, but when you talk about heritage areas, people oftentimes just glaze over and get confused. So really, heritage areas are a very simple thing. They're an economic development tool that uses heritage tourism, because the fact remains, the statistics show that cultural travelers, and I bet almost everyone in this room is a cultural traveler, they spend more money and they stay longer when they go places. So what the Heritage Area model does is actually take those resources that are in a city or in a rural area, and we make them more visitor ready and visitor friendly, so that when people come, there are wonderful attractions for them to see, and they want to stay longer and spend more money. Heritage areas also have a boundary, and I already talked for a minute about the Heritage Area's boundary. Heritage areas also are areas that have a certain density of historic, cultural, and natural resources, and here in Baltimore we absolutely have that density. And Bill Pensick, who was my predecessor, many of you may have met Bill over the years, he was always great about sharing the fact that the National Park Service put a lot of money into Philadelphia, a lot of money into Boston, and all these other wonderful cities, Washington, D.C., but that money was never flowing to Baltimore, and our history is just as important as any of those other cities, and I think everyone here would agree with that. So in 2001, we were designated a state heritage area first. Maryland has what many will argue to be the strongest state heritage area program in the nation. It was originally modeled after Pennsylvania's, but Pennsylvania since that time has run out of a lot of its funding for the heritage area program, whereas thanks to a lot of advocates in Maryland, we've really held on to that funding and our program has remained very strong. Thanks to that funding, we receive operating support from the state. There's 13 state heritage areas now, and groups within those heritage areas are able to apply for funding. And that will be important. I'll talk about it in a minute for the H.L. Mencken House. And that's actually just a quick map that shows the heritage areas, all different, all throughout the state, all the way from Western Maryland, all the way to the shore. And I know I'm going to forget to say it, but when you have time when you get home, check out www.explorebaltimore.org. And I think that website is listed on the mapping guide. And that'll really, you can dig in and learn more about our heritage area program. So what we were super excited about is that in March of 2009, after a lot of heavy lifting by a lot of my predecessors, Congress and the President designated us a national heritage area here in Baltimore, those 22 square miles that I described. It's a program that's managed by the National Park Service. It also means that funding begins to flow from the federal government, which has been very important for us. We get about $300,000 a year, and we immediately turn $100,000 of that back out into our grants for our partners. Will have to be reauthorized in 10 years, and there are 49 national heritage areas across the country in 32 states. Every heritage area is managed differently. Here in Baltimore, we were actually born out of the mayor's office. Until 2011, I was actually a staff member of the mayor. We decided once we became a national heritage area in 2009 that we needed to begin to set the groundwork for splitting away from city government and forming our own nonprofit. So we did that. And in 2012, we split from city government, formed the nonprofit, and now we're able to raise funds and really work with our partners without all of the distractions of politics. So it's a lot easier, and we're really enjoying that autonomy now. The heritage area goals for Baltimore, heritage tourism, which I already discussed, stewardship, we work hard to preserve all those landmarks and all those sites and attractions here in Baltimore. Our neighborhoods, we work hard to make them more visitor ready and visitor friendly. We do a lot of interpretive programs. One of the challenges here in Baltimore is that Baltimore's history is so diverse. Everything from civil rights, Civil War, War of 1812, philanthropy, the railroad, industry, it goes on. And so our interpretive plan actually has 4 different kind of buckets that we put all of that interpretation into. We really work hard to highlight all of them. During the 1812 commemorations, did anybody attend Celebration or Spectacular, go down and see the tall ships and all that? A few people? Well, it's coming back. So in October, make sure you come here to Baltimore and you come downtown. We'll have Fleet Week from October 12th through October 17th or 19th, I believe it is. But the Heritage Area is a big partner with these 1812 and naval and maritime activities. Back in during Spectacular and Celebration in 2012 and 2014, we distributed 160,000 passports, 800 commemorative coins. We did history happy hours. We did fashion shows here at the Maryland Historical Society. And like I said, we're excited that Fleet Week is coming back with the Blue Angels in October. One of the things we released last year in 2015 was our African American Heritage Passport. They're free to the public. It's called A Lasting Legacy. It was funded by PNC Bank and with a partnership with the Mayor's Office. Dozens of sites throughout Baltimore with very important African American history are highlighted. And we ran a contest actually where kids, because we're trying to get into the 21st century, and kids were able to post selfies of themselves standing in front of these important sites. And we ran a contest with some prizes for the kids that did the majority of that. Our most exciting program that we just started last year and really kicked into high gear in the spring of this year is our Kids in Kayaks program. We had realized for years that kids in Baltimore, here we are, we live on the water. Kids not only were never getting out on the water, but they were afraid of the water oftentimes. With this program was simply a $15,000 investment from the National Park Service, which we matched with $13,000 of city funds. We got 600 city 8th grade students out on the water, not once but twice. And it's a great program that combines environmental stewardship with a history lesson, and also they learn a new skill, and hopefully they come back and want to go out on the water over and over again. And thankfully, we received funding again, so we're getting 600 more kids out on the water during this school year. Hopefully it cools off a little, because our first program was actually canceled from the heat. That's the kids down the middle branch having one of their water experiences. And that's all the kids afterwards. And what we discovered, and there's actually a video that I think is linked from our website. These kids at the beginning of the day would be scared to death, and then by the end of the day, they would be coming back off the water with smiles on their faces. And one of our favorite parts about the whole thing is they were all on their own, not prompted by us, talking about the trash in the water. They were upset by the trash in the water. They were saying they were going to go home, and they were going to tell their friends to stop throwing water, plastic bottles on the ground, because it all ends up in the bay. They did all that because they saw the pollution in the water, and so it's a real game changer for these kids, and honestly for all of us. Real quickly, some of the other exciting programs that we do. One of the things that we passed around, we do daily walking tours here in Baltimore from May 1st through October 31st. If you haven't taken one of our walking tours, please do. They leave from the Inner Harbor Visitor Center. We also manage the Charles Street National Scenic Byway, and not only are we a National Heritage Area, but in that same year, in December of 2009, Charles Street was designated a National Scenic Byway, one of the only urban byways in the country. Can anybody here tell me what probably one of the most famous, there's 3 urban National Scenic Byways. Can somebody tell me what the most famous one is? Anybody?
Broadway?
Oh, that would be a good one. It's actually the Strip in Las Vegas is a National Scenic Byway. So, yeah. So there's an urban one in Minnesota, and then the Strip, and then the Charles Street National Scenic Byway. We also run the Authentic Baltimore program, where our partners can really highlight the fact that they are, when visitors come to Baltimore, they want an authentic experience that they can only get here, and that's the purpose of the Authentic Baltimore program. So just check that out by going authenticbaltimore.org. We do tour guide training and certification, so we can try to get all the tour guides here in Baltimore kind of speaking, sharing the same facts and consistent facts, correct facts, when they're giving tours. We also do a lecture series at City Hall every year. And then I already mentioned Fleet Week coming. Coming soon, we're going to do a new walking tour on the west side, which will include the H.L. Mencken House. We're really going to kick off what we're going to call a Heritage Neighborhoods program, which we're still defining. And then super exciting, it'll just be announced probably next month, probably towards the end of the month. We're about to receive $85,000 from the National Park Service to hire an urban fellow who will concentrate here in Baltimore and Baltimore's neighborhoods through our heritage programs that we manage. So we're super excited about that. Just wanted to share the economic impact. It's not just talk, it's real, and that's why that's so important on this heritage tourism stuff. Star Spangled Spectacular alone, 1.43 million attendees, 15% from outside Maryland, 75% from outside Baltimore, a direct impact of $96.53 million. So it's big money, and it's important to all of us, and it's important to Baltimore's residents, so that we can create a better world for everybody by really increasing tourism here to Baltimore. Just a couple more slides. Leveraging partnerships. We have over 200 active partners that we work with on a daily basis. A lot of those are through our grant programs. I know Brigitte and Nick have taken advantage of a lot of those. Our local National Park Service partner is Fort McHenry National Monument and Historic Shrine. And perhaps our biggest challenge now that we're apart from the mayor's office and we're our own nonprofit is not competing with our partners for funding. We run 3 grant programs every year. One is a $100,000 small capital grant program where any museum here in the city, any group can apply to receive up to $15,000 to do a small capital project. It can be fixing a sidewalk, fixing gutters, whatever they need for their historic home or their attraction. We also manage the Maryland Heritage Areas Authority grants where we bring $300,000 to $400,000 to the city and our partners every year. And then our grant program that we just started is actually the year before last, so we're now in our third cycle. This will be our third $100,000, so we've now given out $300,000 of federal funding to our partners through our Heritage Investment Grant Program. Okay, so the reason why we're here, and I really wanted to share that so you know who in the world this group is that is potentially coming in to work with all of you to reopen and manage the H.L. Mencken House. And so basically, you know, we've been around here in Baltimore for a long time. I think probably everyone in the room knows that the Hinsey estate was given to Baltimore. It's almost $3 million. When I started in December 2007, we had just learned about this $3 million. So we've all been watching that, really basically watching it not really go anywhere. And I think everyone has been increasingly frustrated with that, because what organization would not like to have $3 million sitting there ready to, you know, reopen a National Historic Landmark? So Courtney Wilson with the B&O Railroad Museum, I guess it was in the spring of 2015, was hired by the city to do a study and to look at what are the viable options for using this funding and getting the H.L. Mencken House back open. So he completed his study, he presented it to the city, talked to my board of directors, and then what happened is the city approached us and they said, would the Baltimore National Heritage Area consider working with the city to manage the house and get the house back open to the public? So what we are involved in now is that process of working on the lease and coming up with an agreement, working with the partners so we can define what that looks like. The overall management of the house would be by the Baltimore National Heritage Area. We would be the ones going in every day, opening the doors, and getting the house open, making sure the lights are on, the heater air conditioning is on. We would be housing 3 full-time staff and 1 part-time staff member, and there would be some meeting space for all of us to use. Programming and interpretation would be managed by the Friends of H.L. Mencken. New exhibits would be designed and placed into the house. They would be responsible for opening the house for visitors and tours, and also the house would obviously be available for the wonderful special events that I've heard the groups have done over the years that really they need to come back, and we really need to strengthen and get those events happening again. In terms of the timeline, we were developing a cooperative operations plan between the National Heritage Area and the Friends Group. That was, our goal was to get that done in June. My staff member, Jason Vaughn, is putting the final touches on that, and then we're gonna review it with the Friends. We just wanna get that in place so that we all know like kind of how we're gonna operate together. We're going to finalize a lease agreement with the city by the end of November. We want to do that before this mayor, who's a real fan of the Baltimore National Heritage Area, before she transfers out of office. We want to get this done now while she's there. If this all goes well, RFPs for construction and renovation would come out in the spring of 2017. Renovations would then begin after all the negotiations and contractors are chosen. Renovations would begin probably honestly earlier than December 2017, but for sake of a timeline, we're saying December through August of 2018. Simultaneous with that, during all 2017-2018, we'd be doing exhibit development and fundraising. And I mentioned early on those grants from the Maryland Heritage Areas Authority and the Heritage Investment Grants. We'd be working with the Friends groups to actually really nail down some of those grants to pay for the design and fabrication of those exhibits. And all of this with a goal of reopening the H.L. Mencken House to the public on September 12th, 2018. So we're very excited about this opportunity. We are not taking it lightly. Talking to other directors of National Heritage Areas across the country, National Heritage Areas, our business is not to come in and manage a house, a historic home. That's really not what we're meant to do. So what our goal is to get the house open and really set the infrastructure in place, and then it'll be up to all of you and the Friends to really operate in the interpretation and the openness, reopen in terms of programming the H.L. Mencken House to the public. So I think we wanted to do some Q&A because this is a great opportunity with all of you in a room, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. So I'm all yours. Sure. Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation.
You survived.
In terms of the Mencken House, I guess there's 3 things that gives me a little pause, or should give us pause. One is the house is relatively small. The concept of 3 full-time staff people and a meeting space will take up a fair bit of space. and that would be space which would be lost because most of the original furnishings are available.
Right.
So that's a delicate balance, and also, as in any historic home, would stress the house in terms of long-term use. The other thing is that for this house, if it were to be restored and be attractive to the public, it's going to need both a full-time curator, such as Vince Fitzpatrick, and probably not full-time, part-time person, and a part-time conservator, so that the artifacts that are restored to the house don't perish, which they will if they're not cared for. So it may be that the office space with people turning on lights and doing things in the house which would not be helpful to, say, preserving books and all the other furnishings there. So a great deal of care and consideration has to be going into this, because intrinsically the two, using it as office space and as a museum, are not necessarily compatible.
True. Oh, absolutely true. And did you maybe have a third point?
No, that was
Okay. Yeah, addressing that, the space use, we've actually been working pretty closely with Brigida, and I know it feels that the house is small, but honestly, the Heritage Area staff, we take up a very small, if you took this room and divided it up into 8 sections, our 3 full-time staff basically take up probably 1/8 of that space, because it's really not as much space as you think, because people would share a room. And I think, Brigida, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we were very focused on the staff being on the 3rd floor with a meeting space for everybody on the front of the 2nd floor. And we're still very early in all of this. Brigida, am I getting that?
Roughly, right.
Roughly, yeah. So I hear you loud and clear, absolutely.
The first floor would be exhibit space.
The first floor would be exhibit space. 2/3 of the 2nd floor would be exhibit space. And I believe his bedroom was on the 3rd floor. Yeah.
yes, but I think his workspace was on the first, 2nd floor of the front room.
Right,
That's
right.
true.
Yeah, it's definitely a delicate balance, absolutely. But the flip side is, none of us want 10 more years to go by and to have a house not open to the public. So absolutely, together we've got to figure this out. But I hear you loud and clear. Yep.
Hi, Frank and I are longtime members, and we've been watching this saga for a long time. Let's see, I'm wondering if you have solved the problem of handicap access, but also benefited by the growth of knowledge and conservatorship in all this time. Other people have made mistakes for which you can benefit.
True.
And don't ever forget that there was that matter of the water leak that people found in time that caused damage, even though the house has been used for various things. We even saw H.L. Mencken walking around in his library years ago, but there was another, Anyway, so we've watched it in various stages of development, and so I think it's a very good time to get it all together. Thank you very much.
Sure.
And
Well,
as to handicapped access,
Yeah, absolutely. What we've heard that there's general agreement on is that the handicapped access would be through the back, into the back of the house, and that's the best viable option for National Historic Landmark, because the flip side is the Peel has really struggled with the idea of, like, where do you build an elevator to get people